It occurred to me there's something else I can try doing. If you look on the schematic here, they label a point A, and that is a key point when you do the alignment. That's the IF AGC bus. Typically when you align a TV, you want to disable that by tying it to a fixed voltage source. That way when you're feeding a low-level signal into the set to peak the coils, you're not fighting with the AGC that's trying to boost the gain. So they conveniently have a jack here on the circuit board labeled IF AGC, and I have clipped in a power pack that I often use while aligning TVs. It's just 3 AA batteries wired in series to give me 4.5 volts. I've clipped one side here, and the positive to ground. Typically you want to have a little bit of a negative voltage on that. Now in this case I guess it does say negative 0.5 volts on that one too, but I don't know exactly what the bus voltage should be, but we'll see how minus 4.5 volts works out. If need be, I can drop it down or even just ground that point. And I've got a craptastic antenna hooked up, just some alligator leads going right into the tuner. So let's give this a try. Oh, I also swapped out the damper tube for the hell of it. That was one of the only 2 tubes left in the set that it originally came with. That's a good sign. And that's an even better sign. Let's see. Try turning up the brightness a little. I've taken the knobs off the set so I had to go hunting around for one. Alright. Contrast is over here on the volume knob. Alright. Let's see, it's vertical control. Alright. I'm going to see what difference it makes to just ground that AGC bus. Okay, just grounding it doesn't work so well. I believe there's more gain the less negative that bus is. So right now I've got too much gain that's really overdriving the set. Oh, that's curious. Right now, I don't have anything connected to it. Well, I don't quite know what to say. Perhaps the set just spontaneously fixed itself. Curious to try turning the set off and back on again. It could be that some resistor or something's not hooked up right and a charge builds up and it's not bleeding off, and by hooking up that voltage it was still working right even though I pulled it off. In fact, I bet that is what's happening, because the AGC has a bit of a memory. It's got a capacitor on it, and once that drains off I bet I'll go right back to the same problem. Now, if the set had worked great with me grounding that, yeah, I could just permanently ground that point and call it done. But I am kind of curious to find out what the source of the problem really is. No, it is coming back alive. Well, alright, I'm not going to complain. I guess what I'll do now is leave the set off for a little bit longer and see what happens. I just noticed something. I was fiddling around with the brightness and contrast, and now I've lost all sound and video again. However, if I dial the contrast down, comes back. So I think the contrast control might have an interaction with the AGC, and it seems like this only works when I have the contrast at the extreme end. And there it's gone. So I think all this time when I've been tucking voltages and all that, I had the contrast at this position. And it was purely coincidental when I was mucking around with that bias voltage on the AGC bus, I happened to also turn the contrast control. It's not exactly a very watchable picture though. So maybe the contrast control is just bad, or whatever it's hooked up to, so that's what I'm going to look at next. Now that the set is sort of working, I also want to go back and check those voltages that led me down this path to finding this problem. If you recall, one of those was this point up here that's labeled 150, that should be 190 volts according to the schematic. And we had much more than that. Well, if I check it now, about that. Right about 190. And as far as the AGC bus goes, this is with no fixed bias or anything like that. It's just running on its own with the contrast control all the way at one end. We've got about -2 volts, -1.5. Just kind of jumping around. So those are about the kind of voltages I should be getting throughout the contrast control's range. Here's the contrast control on the schematic. It's a 65K potentiometer, one end isn't used, the center wiper goes to 275 volts, the other end goes through this 18K resistor to this node, up through this resistor and over to the video output tube. I believe what it's doing there is controlling the gain. So more contrast, more gain. Now what does it have to do with the AGC bus? Well, if you follow this around, there's a signal picked off of the video output. It's fed back over, and down here to that AGC keying tube. So if there's no video coming out of that tube, that messes up this circuit. Now I've just thrown an ohm meter onto that contrast control, and see one end isn't used, and here's the center wiper, and here's the other terminal. So with it cranked all the way over, so where I had it when the set was playing and we had video and audio, it's essentially 0 ohms. It's all the way over at one extreme. Now if I rotate it, I'm going to slow increase of resistance until it just explodes and starts jumping around like crazy. So I've got about half a mega ohm. It's only supposed to be 36K at the maximum. And as I'm rotating it and rotating it and rotating it, nothing's happening. So we've actually only got resistance, any variation in resistance, at just maybe a couple degrees of turn all the way at one extreme. So I think we found our smoking gun. And there, it's just all nonsense from here on out. Now, unfortunately, that's kind of an oddball control because it's got this shaft blowing right through it, which is the volume control, because the volume potentiometer is way over here along with the power switch. So I don't have any controls like that with the center hollowed out, so to speak. So what I'll try doing at first is just spray some deoxit D5 in there and work it and hoping I can just clean up a dirty contact. 'Cause this set was sitting around, I'm sure, for many years, and it's got some corrosion, so it might just be very dirty. Otherwise, I will try to unmount it and perform a little surgery on it. Well, the deoxit had no effect, so I'm going to wire in a temporary potentiometer. I unsoldered one of the leads here, and I noticed it was just lightly tacked onto one side of that pot. And then I looked at the other leg, and I noticed that there are the remains of some wrapped wire. So what I bet happened is this pot fried a long time ago, and they couldn't get any picture on the set whatsoever, so somebody cut the wire off there, soldered it on the other side, and found that if they cranked it all the way to that side, they could at least get an overdriven picture. So what I'm going to tack in is this guy. It's a 50K pot. It should work just fine in place of this 36K pot. So I'm going to solder a lug onto here and then tack that wire onto another leg of it. Not permanent by any means, but should be enough to allow me to continue fiddling with this set. Alright, that's getting better. Volume control is still a little dirty, and now I've got a contrast control I can actually manipulate. So that's how it was before, with the control slammed all the way over. Now I can back it off. Get something a little more watchable, like there maybe. There's brightness. So not too bad, not too bad. Keep in mind, I just have a crude antenna hooked up right now, and this is a low power station. I bet it'd look a lot better if I feed in a strong signal. Alright. Got a bit of picture tweaking to do on the controls. Controls are kind of goofy on this set. And that we've got the outer controls, just stuck on some predictor knobs here. The real knobs would be a bit shorter. But within each one of these, there's actually another control. You use something like a small flat-bladed screwdriver. You feed it right down the center of this hollow shaft. As you can see, those are actually dual controls. So, for example, on the vertical, the outer is vertical hold, and the inner is height. On the brightness, the outer brightness, and the inner is vertical linearity. Horizontal, outside horizontal hold, and the inner is a horizontal frequency lock range, or something along those lines. There's also another control that's virtually inaccessible. Buried up in here, kind of behind where I just made some repairs, down in there. I believe that is the width control, believe it or not. I stuck it up in there. My width isn't quite right. This white bar should be all the way over here. Either that or the centering's off a little bit, because it looks okay on the left side, but not on the right side. So the whole thing should shift over a little, or my width is off a little bit. I'll need to get a test pattern generator hooked up to know for sure. But for now, I'm just going to tweak things a little bit more, then leave this set play for I don't know, maybe an hour or so to see if any problems come up. And alright, it's been playing a while, just fine. So I pulled out an over-the-air digital to analog converter box, and one of you had requested to see what one of these Astro TV animal antennas might perform, so I pulled the cable out of the rear end and hooked it up to twin lead to TV F-type connector thingy, and I rigged up the output of this to the antenna with jacks on the back. So let's see, get this off channel 6, and well, channel 4 would be it.
Such a group could have stopped Adolf Hitler, prevented a world war, saved millions of lives. You mean we become the cardinal?
The antenna works okay. So I need to lift it up a little, move it around to get a good picture. If I leave it down here, it's getting a bit fuzzy.
He believed there was mental communication between
Turn off
groups
these
of animals
lights.
and primitive men. Ability that was
I haven't even tried the fine-tuning yet. That'll probably help too. Well, actually, it was pretty much dead on with no adjustments necessary. Let's see what else might be on. It's combat. do my favorite and pull up some cartoons. Just because they look, they generally look really sharp with the, well, the animation tends to look pretty good on these black and white TVs, is what I'm trying to say. It's getting a little bit late and I'm starting to babble. I'm fiddling with the contrast a little bit.
We'll have to attract him. Ready, Tracy? Maybe not.
Check this out. I switched from channel 4 to channel 3 and it's a much sharper picture.
Overloading it like
I noticed it on some other sets too. So here, I'll go back to 4.
But before it can work, I've got to...
See, they've got interference. Got some lines here, and I think I showed that before, quite some time ago on another TV. Here it is on 3. So I don't know if it's some equipment I have that's generating some interference, or what the deal is. But that looks pretty damn good, I think. You may have noticed some scratches and spots and flecks and such on the picture. Well, it turns out those are not actually on the cathode ray tube. Those are in safety glass. I removed it and washed down the CRT, which was pretty dirty, but nice and clean now, and you can definitely see that the scratches are in the safety glass. And it's still pretty dirty too. I'll clean all that off. So this is tempered safety glass. It's also tinted. Serves a couple purposes. One, the tint cuts down on glare, and 2, it protects you in the advent of the picture tube shattering. So I do need to reinstall it. I don't know much of anything about getting scratches out of glass, if it's even possible. So for now, I'll just clean it up and reinstall it.